Howdy folks, Kevin here. Let's talk about healthy testing habits. Anyone who has focused on improving their health has learned that health begins with good habits, taking care of one's teeth, exercising regularly, eating a healthy diet, and so on. Quick fixes like diet pills and one jog around the block might provide temporary improvement, but for permanent results, healthy habits are the way to go. It occurred to me recently that this is true for software quality as well. It's not enough to splurge on the latest test case management system or adopt the newest test framework. Real software quality is a result of healthy testing habits. Below are 6 healthy testing habits you'll want your team to adopt. Habit number 1, check your overnight tests and fix any failures. Many software testers create automated tests that are designed to run overnight. But how many testers take the time to check and fix any failing tests? Too often, our nightly test runs become repositories of mediocrity. If most of the tests pass, we assume everything is okay and dismiss the flaky tests. Or maybe you don't dismiss them, but you've got more important things to do or fires to put out. Most likely fires to put out. With a test suite like that, how will you be alerted to actual problems? It's true. If you assume that a test is failing just because the code automation isn't working correctly, you should at least skip that test and get back to a 100% passing test rate. Having it like 97% pass is just not good. They'll talk about it in just a second. So your habit is to make a commitment to have 0 flaky tests. Check your overnight test runs in the morning and rerun any failures. If you notice that you are getting false failures in a specific test, fix those tests so they won't be flaky. Then you will have overnight test runs that your team can truly rely upon. I think overnight test runs are a good idea. Not only does it check for quality of the code that's been deployed, it also checks for quality of the tests themselves. Running your overnight test runs every night is going to expose flaky tests, and you should fix them. So I think that's a good habit to get into. Habit 2. Run unit and integration tests with every build. Hopefully the developers on your team have created unit tests for their code. When unit tests are run with every code commit, they provide incredibly fast feedback. Integration tests are also extremely helpful because they can alert the team to potential lost connections to the database or to another team's API. Set up your build system so that every build will run your unit and integration tests and fail if any tests fail. You'll be pleased to see how well this practice keeps bugs from escaping to production. This is another great idea. I think it's something that a lot of people are pretty familiar with, but one of the, unit tests don't take that long to run. And I think one of the problems that you could end up with unit tests if there are failures that creep into your unit tests, the developers who run the unit tests see those failures and they're like, well, I don't know how to fix this. I didn't make this test fail. It was already failing before I made my changes. So I'm just going to ignore the test failure and move on. And then it just kind of snowballs after that. So having them run with every build is really important because the moment that those unit tests break, the developer has to go in and fix them. And that's important to do. Habit number 3, set up regular security checks. Security problems can pop up at unexpected times. Recently, it's become more common for malicious users to find and exploit package vulnerabilities. This is very true. I've run into this quite often recently, where a third-party package on NPM gets, It gets taken over by a nefarious party. Something gets published to that package that gets pulled in by a primary dependency, and then you now have a vulnerability in your code without changing any code on your side. You could have left the code there forever, but because of the update, it now has a problem. This is why I like pinning down releases on code to a specific release. Don't do like a minor release or a patch release, because what the malicious user will do is push a patch release that your dependency system will say, hey, it's a patch release, I can accept this, it's fine. And then now you have a vulnerability in your code. Not good. One way to avoid having vulnerable packages or other security holes in your code is to scan your code periodically. There are many automated scanning tools available for this purpose. You can set up your automated scanning tools to run once a week and alert you to any possible vulnerabilities. Don't forget that you can also set up your own security automation to check for things like access control and security misconfiguration. I don't know why you'd want to run this just once a week. I would probably run it a lot more often than that. Once a day, and then on every deploy. Or, sorry, every build. I don't know how long it takes to run security tests. I don't think it takes that long. Habit 4, run load tests before releasing. Do you know how your application behaves under load? Hopefully you have run load tests on your application at some point. But remember that every time there is a change to your application's behavior, for example, when adding a new API or altering a database query, the performance of your application may change. A healthy load testing habit involves load testing your application before you release any changes. If there's a significant slowdown in your app's performance, you'll want to investigate that and make whatever changes are needed. So basically, they're saying that we do load testing as part of the initial product lifecycle, but as you add more and more features, the load testing doesn't get run again, because I think it's like seen as a specialty thing that is only done once or twice. But really, anytime you change your application's behavior, you should run load tests. I think that's a pretty good habit to get into. Habit 5 is to ping your APIs at regular intervals. Just because your API was working correctly last night and the last time you deployed your software doesn't mean that it's working correctly now. All kinds of things can cause your API to be unresponsive. Perhaps someone in IT accidentally changed a firewall rule. Maybe a third-party API that your API relies upon has gone down. When things like this happen, you'll want to find out about it before your customers do. Yeah, preferably. A great healthy habit is to set up a ping check on your APIs. You can set up a specific health endpoint that returns positive or negative results, or you can use an existing GET request. Whichever method you use, you'll want to set your check to run every few minutes and alert you if something is wrong. So basically, check your API. API tests are really quick, especially if you're just doing like, what do they say, health checks? Yeah, health checks. It shouldn't be anything long. Set up monitors and alerts. How many problems has your team encountered with your application that could have been prevented if you were alerted to them ahead of time? Perhaps you ran into an issue where a server had reached maximum CPU and stopped responding to requests, or maybe a database was filled to capacity and started rejecting all additions of new data. Setting up monitoring and alerting means that you can be notified of a problem before it becomes a disaster and affects your customers. So essentially, instead of you set an alert that says it's reached 90% of CPU load for this specific amount of time, or the database has a limited amount of memory left. So basically, let you know beforehand that things are going to, or that are about to fail. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It's important to make sure that you aren't alerting too often, though. If you and your team get too many alerts, you'll begin to suffer from alert fatigue and stop paying attention to them entirely. Work with your team to determine exactly what you should alert on and make sure that you and your team take turns responding to alerts so no one person bears all the responsibility. It's easy to see how healthy testing habits like these can greatly contribute to your software quality. They aren't as exciting as buying a new testing tool, but they are cheaper and more effective. Well, the truth is, you set up these habits, you might get to buy a new testing tool, especially if you're doing load testing or API alerts or something like that. Yeah, so those are some healthy testing habits that you might consider. Until next time, have fun testing.